In August 1963, a gang robbed the train, taking over £2.6 million and fled. But what seemed to be a perfect crime quickly fell apart, and a series of mistakes made before, during and after led to their eventual capture. Here we will explore the robbery, the men that committed it, and the mistakes which led to their capture. In total, 16 men took part in the main robbery, taking several months to plan, with Bruce Reynolds, Gordon Goody and Buster Edwards being considered the ringleaders. The plan was simple: to rob an overnight mail train, known as travelling post offices. These, quite simply, were trains used to transport large quantities of mail across Britain, with staff sorting mail en route, dropping off and collecting mail at stations on its journey. But most importantly, they also transported large quantities of money. The majority of the information obtained about the train and its contents were provided by a man known only as the Ulsterman. The train chosen was the overnight from Glasgow to London Euston. Usually, they would carry around £300,000, but as the previous weekend had been a bank holiday, this potentially increased the amount in excess of £2.5 million. At 6:50 p.m. on 7th of August, the train left Glasgow Central Station, scheduled to arrive at Euston at 3:59 a.m. the next morning. But shortly after 3 a.m, driver Jack Mills was forced to make an unscheduled stop when they hit a red signal at Sears Crossing, Ledburn. Second crew member David Whitby climbed out the cab to call the signalman from a line-side telephone, but the line had been cut. Unknown to the two men, the signal had been tampered with the green light covered and the red being powered by a 6-volt ever-ready battery. Before he could return to the cab, Whitby was attacked from behind and overpowered. At the same time, other gang members entered the cabin, and during the struggle, Mills was struck from behind and rendered semi-conscious. Here, the gang ran into a problem. The train needed to be moved half a mile to Bridego Bridge, where their ex-army drop-side truck was waiting. Having predicted this, the gang had explored several options before deciding to hire an experienced driver. The driver they found was an acquaintance of Ronnie Biggs, a retired train driver known only as Stan. This proved to be their first mistake, as on the night, Stan revealed he was unfamiliar with the newer type of locomotive. As they were now useless, Biggs and Stan were banished to the car to help load, leaving Mills as the only alternative to move the train and front two carriages to the required spot. After forcing their way into the HVP carriage, they overpowered the staff and made them lie face down in the corner. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes, they removed 120 of the 128 sacks, loaded them into the truck, and 30 minutes after the robbery began, left the scene using the truck and 2 Land Rovers with the same registration plates in a bid to mislead witnesses. But before leaving, a gang member told staff not to move for half an hour, proving to be the second major mistake. Whilst planning, the gang had to find a safe house where they could lay low for a few days. 2 months prior to the robbery, Brian Field had purchased Leatherslade Farm, a run-down farm 27 miles from the planned stopping point. Upon returning to the farm after the robbery, they divided the money, with each member taking £150,000 and some smaller sums for associates. They celebrated what they perceived as a successful robbery, even playing Monopoly using money from the robbery. Through listening to police radio, they heard the infamous line, "They've stolen the train." But the celebrations were cut short when they discovered police had worked out the safe house to be within a 30-mile radius, primarily due to the staff being told to lay low for half an hour. This forced the gang to leave the safe house 2 days early. Some scrubbed the farm down to remove fingerprints, whilst others went to locate new vehicles, as the ones they had used were seen by train staff. The ones they used were repainted, and the gang left the farm. Field then arranged for an associate to destroy the farm with a fire, but they took the money and ran. Upon learning this, some members arranged to go back and do it themselves, but it was too late. Police had discovered the farm. Police arrived at the scene of the robbery very quickly and began to gather witness statements. The train itself was brought to Cheddington Station. From the statements, police gathered that about 15 men in blue boiler suits were involved and had gone no more than 30 miles away. But with little more information, Buckinghamshire Police referred the case to Scotland Yard, initially being handed to Ernie Millen before being passed to Tommy Butler and the flying squad on 12th of August. They found out from the crime scene and had a watch put on seaports, but still gathered no major leads. That was until 5 days after the robbery. A herdsman working on a field next to Leatherslade sent a tip-off to police. When they arrived, the place was deserted, but showed signs people had been there recently. There was food, bedding, sleeping bags, a Monopoly board game, as well as post office sacks and banknote wrappers. They also found vehicles which had been painted yellow. Further analysis of these items provided fingerprints, despite the gang having cleaned all major surfaces. But this was still not enough evidence for police. The next major breakthrough came from two unnamed informants, one of whom had been jailed just before the robbery and exchanged information in return for favourable treatment. From these informants, they managed to get 18 names to compare the fingerprints with. With the gang being known criminals, their prints would have been on record. Unfortunately, it was the turn of the police to make a mistake. They published photos of the suspects, warning them the police were on to them, allowing many to go to ground. Despite them being in hiding, over the following months, police gradually captured many members. The first to be captured, less than a week after the robbery, was Roger Caudry, who had gone to ground in Bournemouth with friend William Bale. Unfortunately for Bale, this led to him being arrested and sentenced to 24 years, despite playing no part in the robbery. He died in prison in 1970. 9 more members were captured by the end of the year, each sentenced to between 25 and 30 years, with White, Edwards and Reynolds on the run, and a few others never identified. Edwards and his family fled to Mexico in July 1965, but returned to England and handed himself in a year later. Reynolds and his family had fled to Mexico in June 1964, and stayed there until December 1966, when they moved to Canada, having already spent most of the money. They then went to Nice, before returning to England to get more money, where he was captured by Tommy Butler. Meanwhile, White, who was said to have a remarkable ability to be invisible and had already been on the run for 10 years, stayed in England, but after being taken advantage of and let down by his associates, he was captured in April 1966 with only £8,000 of his share to hand. There were further twists in the tale. In August 1964, Wilson was broken out of Winson Green Prison in Birmingham and went on the run. He went to Paris having plastic surgery before going to Canada. He was recaptured in January 1968 after he invited his brother-in-law over for Christmas, allowing police to track him down. 11 months after Wilson's escape, Biggs escaped from Wandsworth Prison after a ladder was dropped over the 30-foot high wall. He fled to Paris, where he had plastic surgery, reportedly from the same surgeon who worked on fleeing Nazis. He then fled to Australia, then to Brazil after authorities began to close in on him. With Brazil having no extradition treaty with the UK, Biggs lived openly in Brazil until 2001, when he returned after suffering 3 strokes. He was arrested upon landing and made to serve the rest of his sentence, but was released in 2009 due to ongoing health issues. This notoriety made Biggs, despite his very small role in the robbery, the best known of the robbers. In the end, all but 4 of those who played a part in the robbery were captured. The ones who weren't were never formally identified. Out of the 2.6 million stolen, less than £400,000 was ever recovered, with most of it being spread between family associates, spent or used by those captured to pay their legal fees. But all in all, if it had not been for a series of mistakes made either unintentionally or through cockiness, they may have got away with it. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, it would be greatly appreciated if you could leave a like and share. If you would like to see more, then please subscribe. I also have a Patreon, where you can help support this channel in return for a variety of rewards, including early access to videos and the opportunity to help choose topics for future videos. The link can be found in the description below. Till next time, I've been Faxam and hope to see you again soon.